Hi everyone, I hope you're really well. Welcome, or indeed welcome back to the channel. If you are new, don't forget to hit subscribe because today I'm reviewing this foundation brush from Pur. So about a month ago I did a drugstore beauty haul and I included a random product that I picked up from Feel Unique, which was this foundation brush because it had been on my radar for a little while. I had seen some reviews. It got me very excited because I have always wanted to try one of these kind of flat foundation brushes which are supposed to give you the most flawless, beautiful foundation application. In terms of foundation brushes that look like this, it's also amongst one of the more affordable ones as well. So I was really curious just to try one out, compare it to some of the other makeup applications that I regularly do, and just see what all the fuss was about in terms of these kind of flat paddle, huge brushes that you're supposed to be able to just stroke your makeup on so easily and flawlessly. As usual, just before I get too far ahead of myself with this review and the demos I've got coming up, I just want to quickly show you Pur's website, just in case you've never heard of this foundation brush and you want to hear a little bit more about it before my review. Okay, so this is the purcosmetics.com website. So the price is in dollars, but we'll have a look somewhere else in just a minute to see if we can get a price in pounds as well. You can see here that they're saying that makeup application just got a lot easier with their skin perfecting foundation brush. It has a unique oval shape, which I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with because it looks like pretty much every other oval brush that has come out, but I could be wrong there. It has a dense bed of synthetic bristles and a large grip handle that gives you plenty of control. You'll achieve an airbrushed full coverage effect that looks like second skin every time. You can use it to flawlessly apply their new Brittle foundation or your favourite creams, powders, bronzers on the face and body. And in terms of using it, you just apply the foundation directly to the brush and then apply it to your skin with long strokes for a flawless finish. Something I do quite like about Pur's website is they've got a Q&A section here. So immediately one of the questions I wanted to know the answer to was how often can I wash it, and someone had actually asked that and they'd answered it already. We would recommend washing your brush as much as you feel comfortable doing. Okay, that's a little bit of a cop-out because what if you wanted to wash it every single day, which would probably be a bit much. Once a month should be the maximum amount of time that you allow between washes, so at least that gives you some kind of guidance. So essentially they are kind of saying you can wash it as many times as you want to, as long as you're doing it at least once a month. And as promised, here's the price in pounds. This is feelunique.com. This is where I actually purchased the foundation brush from, but I didn't pay £19 for it. They had an offer on with 15% off lots of different things, which usually there's lots of brand exclusions for that, but happily Pur wasn't one of them, so I managed to pick this up for £16.15. So if you like the sounds of this foundation brush, it may be worth hanging on for a second because quite often they release these codes for money off, so you should be able to bring the price down a little bit. So I think first things first, I've brought some other brushes out with me just to give you some size reference. So this is the Pur Foundation Perfecting brush. Then I've got my Zoeva 104, which I've had for quite some time and I do really love this brush. So it's not an overly massive brush. I've also got my Real Techniques Expert Face Brush, which admittedly rarely sees any action these days, unfortunately. And lastly, I've got my Too Faced Mr. Right brush. So you can see that Mr. Right is definitely the largest of the lot in terms of height. Just to go back to these on their own, because these are obviously the ones that I use to apply foundation with regularly if I'm not using fingers or a sponge. The Zoeva 104, like I said, I've had for a long time. It's your pretty typical flat top kabuki foundation buffing brush. It's really nicely dense, although there is a bit of movement to it as well. This one works beautifully when it comes to applying foundation, although it can struggle a little bit sometimes on much thicker formulas like, say, Kat Von D's Lock It, did not do so well. With this one, it left streaks. So if you're dealing with a very thick or heavy foundation, this one wasn't fantastic. But for most other formulas that are slightly runnier, it's absolutely beautiful and it buffs product into the skin really nicely. This retails for about £15. Then we have this one, and I managed to pick this up for a similar amount. It was £16, 15 pence, and straight away it's obviously quite different. So the idea with this one is you're not buffing it into the skin like you would do with this kind of product or stippling. The idea with this is you're literally going to be swiping it across your face in this kind of motion, which does take a little while to get used to, I must admit, because I'm very much used to the whole buffing motion of using the Zoeva 104, so that was something to get used to. It's got quite a degree of flex to it as well, although it doesn't feel cheap, it doesn't feel like it's about to fall apart, but I must admit, this part here between the handle and the head of the brush, it does worry me that it's just going to fall apart one day. It's probably just me being a little bit paranoid, but I can't help myself when I use this. I end up holding the handle here, and then I usually rest my index finger on the back just to give it some extra support. I don't think you really need to do that, but it's just a habit that I've got into doing. But the idea is it does give you a little bit of flex, just so that you're not pushing it too hard onto your face. In terms of comparing the bristles, obviously this one is nowhere near as densely packed, although it is pretty densely packed. It's very soft and the bristles are quite movable, which obviously helps with buffing product into the skin. The Pur one, however, is super densely packed and it's so soft. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's the kind of soft and the kind of texture that you could just sit and kind of fondle it for a while because it just feels so nice to touch. I don't know what it is about it, but it's gorgeous. I'm not sure if it's going to show up from this angle, but I have done some cutaways. When it arrived, it did actually have quite a few bristles sticking up compared to the others. And for the moment, I've not trimmed this because I wanted to be able to show you guys what it was looking like. I don't know if all of them come out looking like this or whether it was just mine, I'm not sure. But I will just give these a trim and I'm sure it will be absolutely fine because I've experienced no shedding at all in the time that I've been using this brush, and these bits that are sticking out, as far as I can see, none of them have actually fallen out because they are in there pretty solid. So I'm not quite sure what that's all about, and when it first arrived it was slightly off-putting, but I'm sure just giving them a bit of a trim will sort that out and it won't be an issue. Okay, so what this largely comes down to now is how it performs, obviously. The idea with this is you're able to apply cream products, powder products. There really aren't too many limits in terms of what you can do with it, which massively appeals to me because I like to be able to use something that I can pick up and just use with any product I fancy using on that day. Obviously the first place I wanted to start was with foundation, and straight away I reached for one of my day-to-day foundations, which is L'Oreal Infallible Matte, and let me tell you, the first time I used this I was shocked. It applied my foundation beautifully. It was so effortless, there was no brush marks, it just looked amazing. Not only did it look amazing, it also took less time as well. And I think that's largely because with this, you are literally just swiping it around your face, which it is a strange one to get used to. Normally, like I said, I'm buffing something into the skin, but the buffing process does take a little while. Okay, it's probably not as long as taking a sponge. That usually is the slowest application method for me. But because of the fact that you're not having to buff and just swipe, it's incredibly fast. So straight away I was really delighted with that because I don't tend to have a huge amount of time in the morning to put my makeup on. So absolutely fantastic. Obviously this is an absolutely huge brush head, so being able to do areas like maybe under the eye or around the sides of the nose is a bit tricky, but they do sell a concealer brush. I don't think that's available in the UK, unfortunately, so I would definitely like to get my hands on that one, particularly for doing my under eye area to see if it helps with creasing, because unfortunately I have got to that time in my life now where I do have quite a lot of texture and wrinklage and stuff under my eyes, which makeup just loves to gather in and make it look 10 times worse. So I would be very intrigued to see how well the concealer brush would do based on how well it does with foundation. I have tried this with quite a few different textures of products. I've tried it with varying different degrees of thickness of foundations, right from really ultra thick and quite difficult to work with, like Kat Von D Lock-It, right the way through to quite a watery foundation like the Ordinary's Serum Foundation. So I've played with quite a few different textures and it copes with all of them really well. You can either pop the foundation straight on your face and then start blending, or, and it does actually say this on their website, you can apply the product straight to the brush, and because the brush is so dense, there's not much of a chance of it sinking too far in if that's something that you'd be worried about. And in my experience, that hasn't really happened, even with a really watery foundation like the Ordinary's Serum Foundation. I just squirt it on top. It doesn't really have much of a chance to sink very far, and then you're applying it to your face anyway. So in all the different textures that I've used, it's worked really well. And like I said, it works particularly well with foundations that are a bit more tricky to blend, just purely because of how soft and dense it is. It just works like magic applying those texture foundations to your skin. I don't have many powder foundations anymore to test this with, but the powder foundation that I do have, which is the Becca Mineral one, which I think they discontinued, it picks up a beautiful amount of product just by kind of swirling it in the pan, and then again doing that swiping motion. It just deposits the product absolutely beautifully and very seamlessly. So if you are a powder foundation kind of person, then I think this would also work really well with powders too. I think one of the largest drawbacks with a foundation brush like this over a foundation brush, say like this one, is because of the fact that it's so densely packed, there's so much going on at the top, it takes a long time to dry, which is probably no surprise, but oh my goodness, it takes a long time to dry. With my Zoeva 104, that takes anywhere between 12 and 24 hours, depending on how it is that I'm drying it, because sometimes I'll literally leave it slightly at an angle on a towel to dry, and that obviously takes a little bit longer than if every now and again I just swirl it around very gently on the towel that it's resting on, just to try and speed up the process if I really want to use it. So I would say somewhere between 12 and 24 hours for this one. This one, however, you're looking at least 24 hours, if not longer. And one thing they did mention on the website is they would recommend that you're washing it at least monthly. I think if you were using this foundation brush every single day, you'd probably want to be washing it at least once every couple of weeks. The reason for that being is I've noticed product does stick to the bristles quite a bit, so I think it does have a tendency to absorb product a bit. I don't think it's a huge amount, and I don't think it's anything to be overly worried about, but literally after the first time I used this, I looked at it and I thought, ooh, there is actually some foundation sort of stuck there. And obviously if you're using this every single day, it's just going to keep adding to that amount. Whereas I found with my Zoeva 104, it doesn't really tend to do that quite so much. So whether it's because this is more dense and there is a higher chance of product getting a little bit stuck in there, I'm not sure. That being said, what I do find is the following morning when I go to use it again, because the foundation has dried, if I literally just massage it a little bit, it does help break down the foundation in the bristles and it becomes very soft again. So like I said, it's not a massive issue, it's just something that I've noticed. And I think if I was using a really heavy duty long wearing foundation every day, then it might start to become a little bit of an issue with product build-up. It does wash really easily and beautifully. I was a little bit worried about how long I'd be standing at the sink trying to wash this bad boy because of how densely it's packed, but it does actually wash fairly okay. It does take that little bit longer than something like this flat top kabuki, just purely because with this one obviously you can move the bristles around a bit more and really get the water in there, whereas with this one, because it's so densely packed, it's a bit more tricky to get the water in there. So it does take a little bit longer, but you do get there eventually. Then, of course, you have to wait all that time for the brush to dry, which can be really frustrating because it does apply foundation absolutely beautifully. And I have tried this with quite a few foundations that I know really well. I feel like I've got my application of those products down really well, but when I picked this up and used this instead, it just blew me away with how good the foundation looked. So it is an absolutely fantastic brush, but it can be a little bit frustrating with how long it takes to dry. just purely because you know how good it works, you know how good it's going to make your foundation look, so you just want to pick it up and use it again and again. Unfortunately, I don't have any other foundation brushes of this type to compare it to, but it applies foundation so beautifully. I honestly can't imagine there being much point in investing in any of the more expensive ones, because this has already made me so happy, and it's a really affordable makeup brush as well, so I don't really feel like I have much of a need to look elsewhere. I feel like this was a very lucky purchase in so much as I did manage to get a little bit of money off with a code, but it also turned out to be an absolutely fantastic foundation application brush. So in summary, I would definitely recommend this brush if you'd like to try one of these, or if you're struggling to get your foundation to look really flawless, because this product does apply foundation absolutely beautifully. It's really impressed me. The only real drawback with this brush is how long it takes to dry, so you will definitely need a plan B for foundation application whilst you're waiting for this one to dry. So that is it for today's review. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, I would really appreciate a thumbs up down below, because it does really help support my channel. And if you are new and would like to subscribe to see more content like this from me in the future, I will pop a button just here so you can click it and get notified of new content as and when it gets uploaded. And if you've not seen my last video, I will pop a link to that one just up here so you can click it and check that one out too. Anyway, I hope you're all really well, and I will see you again soon. Bye!